Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 274, The Only Ghost I Ever Saw. It's one of the more bizarre, I'll use that phrase, bizarre of Emily's poems. In 11 poems, she'll actually use the word ghost. Some have qualified this as a Halloween poem. I actually think there's something else going on here, guys, and I'm going to make that argument. Not a lot of scholars have commented on this poem, and not a lot of scholars have commented on specifically Emily's view of the paranormal, we might say. But I think this actually is a poem that probably shouldn't be read literally, but rather symbolically, and I'll hopefully kind of guide you guys in that direction. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful you've already worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our preceding 273 poems. We just finished with 273. He put the belt around my life. Now, there's an interesting way that this poem can actually be read comically, the tone. There's going to be some interesting similes here. So as we read, we'll pay attention to all of this. She'll say it this way. The only ghost I ever saw was dressed in Mechlin, so he wore no sandal on his foot and stepped like flakes of snow. His gait was soundless like the bird, but rapid like the roe. His fashions quaint, mosaic, or happily mistletoe. His conversation seldom, his laughter like the breeze that dies away in dimples among the pensive trees. Our interview was transient. Of me, himself was shy, and, God forbid, I look behind since that appalling day. Exclamation point, by the way. By the way, scholars have pointed out that the dictionary that Emily would have resorted to, Daniel Webster's 19th century dictionary, actually would define appalling as astonish or even to grow white. So in that regards, it I think is fascinating. Now let's start with her use of this word ghost. Now I said already it's in 11 poems. I'll just give them to you so you can run them to ground. 75, 184, 281, 311, 413. I'll share with you 670 because this one's an interesting one. She'll say it this way. One need not be a chamber to be haunted. One need not be a house. The brain has corridors surpassing material place. Far safer of a midnight meeting, external ghost, than its interior confronting that cooler host. And the poem goes on, but I shan't read it. Poem 817, she uses the word ghost. 892 is also, I think, an interesting moment when she says it this way, in the middle of the poem. Before myself was born, 'twas settled, so they say, a territory for the ghosts and squirrels formerly. And then in poem 1400, she'll say it this way in the middle of the poem. But nature is a stranger yet. The ones that sight her most have never passed her haunted house, nor simplified her ghost. And then finally, poem 1593. Now, I'm going to challenge you to read all of those poems in context with this one. And I'm going to make the argument that it isn't abundantly clear that Emily actually believes in the paranormal or in ghosts, although it will be significant. Now, literarily, of course, everybody of Emily's day would think of ghosts and immediately think of Shakespeare's Hamlet. You'll recall the ghost that will appear. And you'll remember that it will be Hamlet who, after speaking with the ghost in Hamlet 1:7, will in fact say to his pal Horatio, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophies, arguing that there is such a thing as a ghost. We've given full lectures on Hamlet, of course, at LearnStrong.net if you're interested. The point I want to make here is that I think Emily is actually, in a euphemistic way, making fun of those who believe in the paranormal and in ghosts, which is why she'll make these references to how the ghost was dressed and how the ghost walked. But I think symbolically, there's something going on here, and it will have to wait for us till we get to the very final 2 lines to get a sense of it. The only ghost I ever saw was dressed in Mechlin, By the way, this is raised or lace embroidery made in the Flemish or French town of Milanese, and therefore kind of ornate, we might say. He wore no sandal on his foot. Now, this will take us back to poem take us forward to poem 275 and the idea of feet and barefoot, and then back to poem 166 with barefoot. This idea of having nothing on his feet also could take us to Hamlet. You'll remember that when Ophelia speaks about Hamlet taking on his antic disposition, that is to say, pretending to be crazy, you'll remember that one of the things she says to her father about him in Act 2 of Hamlet is, he doesn't have shoes, he's barefoot, right? And he stepped, now notice all of these similes here, he stepped like flakes of snow. His gait was soundless like the bird, but rapid like the roe. Again, I think she's playing around with all these ideas of what ghosts are like. His fashions, back to his dress, his fashions quaint, mosaic, or happily mistletoe. You'll remember that reference back on poem 44. His conversation seldom, his laughter like the breeze. Now, this idea of the conversation, obviously, we can always go back to our discussion and reading of Dickens' Christmas Carol and the way in which Scrooge is visited by the ghost of Marley, and so there may be some of that going on here. His laughter like the breeze that dies away in dimples among the pensive trees. Now, pensive is an interesting word choice here, given that we're going to have appalling in a moment. Our interview, that is to say the only ghost I ever saw, and now a conversation that she had with this ghost, our interview was transient. Of me, himself, was shy. In 16 poems, Emily will use this word shy or some variation of it. And of course, Emily, many have argued, herself shy. Of me, himself was shy. And God forbid, by the way, back to poem 184, the only other use of this, God forbid, I look behind since that appalling day. And we've already commented on the word appalling. To look behind, I think, is the key phrase in this entire poem. So you can obviously read this poem the way some have, that Emily had some conversation with a ghost once and only once. But I think there's something else going on here. I think the ghost that Emily is referencing is in fact the ghost of the past. And I think the argument that she is making is you gotta be able to not look backwards. You gotta be able to overcome your fear of the past and to go forwards. Why? Because, as Burns will say in his famous To a Mouse, the best laid plans of mice and men soon off to go awry, you'll remember what he says at the end. He says, I wish I was more like the mouse, as he speaks directly to the mouse. We've given full lecture at learnstrong.net on this. That is to say, the mouse only lives in the present and isn't always thinking about the past. And I think that may be what Emily is getting at here. At 2b, I love the four similes, and I love the tone here, the playful tone, it seems to me. At 3a, well, obviously we've mentioned our Dickens and we've mentioned Shakespeare's Hamlet. At 3b, it is an interesting question if you read this symbolically, as I'm challenging you to read it. What is your ghost of the past that now, God forbid, you would ever look behind or look backwards to? Thank you.